And we are now live with Professor Thad Starner. Thad, where does that name come from?
That's a good question. My parents just made it up. There was a Thaddeus Stevens who was a senator during the Civil War and also a inventor. Yeah, Thaddeus is also in the Bible, but no, it's just straight Thad. Very few of us out there.
I like it. And of course, if you think about it now, knowing that Thad was an inventor, do you think that maybe you were destined to become an inventor because of that, or
well,
just
there's also a Thaddeus in the Bible who's also the patron saint of lost causes. So given that I do some crazy research that a lot of people else would think is not particularly viable, and we end up making it viable, I think that's more inspiration than anything else.
I like it. But now you are a fascinating guy, and I mean, I know we're going to be talking about the wearable tech and stuff, but I want to go back in time. Before all of this started happening, you began wearing tech and calling yourself a cyborg. Can you just a little bit about that?
Well, okay, so back when I was a student at MIT, I found out that I could either pay attention to class or take good notes, but I couldn't do both at the same time. And so I tried, all sorts of note-taking methods that were out there, and I found out that still didn't work. And either I could pay attention and get an intuition for what the professor was saying, and then my notes would, not be existent, or I could take really good notes and never get an intuition for the material. And even when I did get intuition for material, I'd lose it in about 2 hours or so. So I determined to make something, make a machine to help me do better notes as a student, be a better student. Mm-hmm. And so I tried a laptop, and that didn't work. This is back when laptops were relatively new. And that didn't work. But then I got a head-up display called the Private Eye and started making and a one-hand keyboard called a Twiddler. And I found that I could put the focus of the display and the text on the blackboard of the professor in front of me. And I could have my keyboard underneath the desk and type notes quickly and quietly, and nobody knew I was doing it. And that really worked. I could both take good notes and get intuition at the same time. And matter of fact, it focused my attention more than anything else I had in my life. I'm the type of student who falls asleep in class. So, but when I had, when I had the ability to take these notes and see it, I could both write down the notes, understand the lecture, and every time my attention wandered because the professor would say something that was interesting, and I get some great idea, what I'd do is I'd write down the idea quick, and then get right back to the lecture, and that way, kind of offloaded the ideas and all the side thoughts from my mind, and kept me focused on what the professor said. So I did this for a while. And then I realized that I was also using it in conversation, face-to-face conversation. Because when you have a Nobel Prize winner across from you at lunch, you kind of want to take whatever they say and use it, right? So what I did was just started, having the keyboard underneath the table, and there's a big old screen on the eye, and I would just type notes that way. I started living my life this way back in 1993, and the press got a hold of that, Boston Globe. And we realized the reporters were going to call us, and there's a few of us started doing this. While I was the first to wear it around everyday life, we created a group of people who made these machines and used them. And we realized the press would call us cyborgs. And so we looked at what the name cyborg meant, which is this combination of man and machine to make a whole that was greater than the sum of the parts. Okay. And we said that, hey, that's a great name, because the original definition of cyborg included an example. And that was a man riding a bike, right? And saying, look, when you ride a bike, you don't think about, turning or braking. If a car shoots in front of you, you just stop. You don't think about the fact that you're squeezing this lever, which goes around a pivot, which goes down the wire, goes down to cable to the brakes and squeeze it, right? You just stop. And so the bike becomes an extension of yourself. What we were doing with wearable computers is make an intellectual aid that becomes an extension of yourself, a way of taking notes. That gets out of your way. And even better yet, we designed a system that as you take notes, it pulls up memories from your past automatically. It's called the remembrance agent. It pulls up things from your past that might be relevant to the conversation. You find you can use those in your conversation. And so you go from having vague memories to things to having very concrete memories of exactly where you were, what you were doing, what somebody said, what a paper was about. And as a researcher, it makes you seem more intelligent than you are. And as a professor, seeming more intelligent than you are is always a good thing.
Okay, well, I've got 2 comments to make. Number one, that system has been around for a long time. My wife never forgets anything, and she can bring it up at any point that she wants to. I don't know where she stores all of it. And number 2, fast forward what you were wearing in 1993, add AI, Google Glass, faster processors, you could become a beast.
Well, that's one of the things we started doing. Actually, we had this idea back in 2002, 2004, this time period, where suppose we actually have the machine just listening to you all the time. And I'm not saying listening to everything around you, just listening to your speech. That's it. You do a little noise canceling microphone, it just listens to your side of the conversation. But then you can have some remembrance agent starting to pull up things from your past based on the conversation. You don't have to do anything. And it just shows it up in your eyeball. And most of the time you ignore it, but sometimes it pulls up something that's really, really appropriate. And I was with my students one day. His name was Ben. And I knew that he was running the remembrance agent and running this speech to text system all the time. And it was not great. It was via voice running on a wearable computer back in like 2002. So it was really kind of not very good recognition, but it was good enough. And we were having a weekly meeting, and Ben says to me, I'd really like to get working more on the speech stuff. I said, well, if you want to work more on speech, you really should look at Steve Whitaker's work. There's something from he did in, I think, 1995. I believe it was a Chi paper. It was called Philo Chat. I would really go read that paper and read more of his work. And Ben came back to me and said, okay, Thad, by next week I will have read Steve Whitaker's paper on Philo Chat from Chi 1995. And he gets up and walks away. And I say, hold on a second, come back here. And I go and look, and there was, he had taken that exact phrase. He had learned to speak to the speech recognizer. And so the speech recognizer was perfect and had done that. And he could just take that exact phrase and put it into his to-do list. And so we started this thing called dual purpose speech, where you're not just talking to your partner, you're talking to your computer at the same time. Let me give you an example of that. Suppose I'm talking with you right now, and I want to do something like schedule a meeting. Yeah. So let's try it. So can we meet sometime next week?
Sure, we can do that.
Okay. Sorry, what?
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, is there someone in the,
hey.
sorry, it's our class in Greece. We just make sure that the microphone is muted. Okay.
Thanks. So I was going to say, so let's do a quick example here. Can you meet sometime next week?
Mm-hmm. So I say yes, sure, no problem.
Okay, so it looks to me like I'm free on Monday. What time's good for you?
So let's do 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock? Okay, let me put you in for 1 o'clock. And so what's happening there is that as we speak, can we meet sometime next week is a catchphrase for my computer to pull up my calendar.
The AI will obviously know what to do.
And so then it shows me next week, and I say, how does Monday sound, right? And it shows me Monday. And when you say 1 o'clock, I repeat it back to you, and it puts in the schedule at 1. And the thing is, you don't necessarily know I'm talking to my agent.
I see what you're saying. It's almost like that new Google Assistant.
Yeah, except the problem with the Google Assistant or any of these sort of embodied agents is you're saying, okay, Google or Siri or whatever, and they're acting like a third party. They're another party in the conversation. With this, you're both controlling the agent and talking to the person at the same time, and they don't interfere in the conversation. It's not like I'm saying, okay, Google, show me next week, right? And explicitly commanding it that way. It gets
so
in the
you've
way.
actually augmented another aspect to yourself that enhances what you are doing, and it's become seamless.
Yes. It's like, so Nicholas Negroponte who was the head of the media lab at the time I was there, said that's like having a good English butler, right?
That's brilliant.
It's somebody who's actually listening in all the time and trying to provide information for you and service for you on the fly. And I liken that to the example he has is whenever you talk to the CEO of a large company like Toyota, they almost always have an assistant with them. And that assistant's job is to make sure that the schedule's running correctly and listen to the conversation. Is this a great conversation for the CEO? Or do I need to get them away to his next meeting, this sort of stuff? And they'll reschedule stuff, everything in the background, and try to make it so that the CEO's life is as seamless as possible. And it turns out that assistant is going to be a CEO at another major Japanese company. He is learning how to be a CEO by being the current Toyota CEO's assistant. And that way you have somebody who's really, really smart, who's really good at their job already, helping you be a better leader, and at the same time learning how to be one as well. And that's what we're trying to do with the wearable computers from the artificial intelligence standpoint. Can I make a computer that sees as you see, hears as you hear, looks at how you interact with the world, maybe using like, wristwatch motion sensors, may even can look into your brain. We have some brain sensors working on, and actually learn what it is to be a human by observing you, right? What does it mean to shake hands? What does it mean to open a door? What does it mean to, do a motion with a knife and fork, and actually, can it learn how to manipulate the world as a human, how to interact with the world as a human? Can it learn what speech mannerisms are? Can it learn the rules of games by watching your hand motions? Can it learn how to drive just by watching how you do it? So it's this AI through symbiosis is what we call it.
So this is a fascinating field. I mean, I could spend another 3 hours just talking about this, but are you wearing Google Glass at the moment?
I am, in fact.
So why did Google Glass
right up there.
not take off? Let me just get a photo. Why did Google Glass not take off? Because I would love to conduct interviews with people wearing Google Glass, and the Hangouts would be so much better than sitting with a laptop.
Right. So first of all, you have to remember that Google Glass was sold from 2014 publicly, just from 2014, May 2014 to January 2015. It was sold publicly for 9 months. In that time, it sold more. It actually shipped more dollar volume than any other head-worn display ever. That includes all the VR systems. And this was actually sold as an experiment, right? So in many senses, it was a success. It was just that when we stopped selling it in 2015, we were always selling the next version, the next experiment to industry. And so the second version, what's called the Enterprise Edition, has been basically selling since 2015 till now.
Is it still selling?
Still selling.
So I could still get a pair of Enterprise Google Glass?
Not only if you could buy 100 or more. So the first experiment was trying to see what the public would do with it. The second experiment was seeing what industry would do with it. And so now they're looking at these large partners, partners like AGCO, who puts together tractors, or Augmetics, who helps doctors interact with patients. And so and these are quite successful. If you live in Northern California, and you go to your doctor, there's a good chance that your doctor is wearing Google Glass as you visit her, as you're going and getting the interview, the standard, how you feeling, that sort of thing, interview. And why the doctors wear it is great for electronic health records. So as they're having that discussion with you, just like I said about the remembrance agent, they could actually have things pulled up like your past patient health records.
I mean, it's just it's a no-brainer. I mean, just
so it takes doctors from 40% of their day being electronic health records to 4% of the day, and so the doctors love it. They have more time with the patients love it, and so what we're seeing is the Enterprise Edition experiment has been quite successful, as was the Explorer Edition, frankly. There's a lot of times the such usually in the tech press is often wrong.
No, of course. I mean, a lot of people got the. I think there was a lot of negativity from a privacy point of view, but they didn't really see the benefits of it.
That's really, was really quite overblown, because the press likes to focus on. They try to build stuff up and then knock it down because it sells more ad space. But in fact, I've been wearing the systems since '93, right, for 25 years, and I rarely have anybody say anything.
How long does your battery last?
The way I use it, it'll last 15 hours.
That's incredible. Yeah,
so I use it mostly for SMS, email, turn-by-turn directions, calendar, time, an occasional picture of a whiteboard or something, because I'm not being a tourist. So for the way I use it, it's basically all day.
And I mean, now obviously with all the new apps and stuff on most of the cell phones, are you able to integrate that also into your Google Glass?
Well, for me, what I've been doing is I actually have a full Linux distribution on Glass. And so basically I make it into a Unix workstation. And I have my text editor and also out there. And I actually have my one-hand keyboard hooked up to it as well, so that I can type on it and do notes in real time.
But now, of course, with Google, the voice editor, I mean, it's without even training, you can dictate and get it to type out for you.
The problem is that doing speech for most of my life is not really socially appropriate, because most of the time I spent in classroom or talking with students. And so having a silent text entry device, this is something called a twiddler.
Is this the twiddler that you were talking about? Now, how does that work? That's just the most fascinating device.
It's pretty easy. I don't know if you can actually see the letters on this one. But I'll try to get close to the camera. It's just A, B, E, F, G, H. So it's just sequential. Yeah. And this here is the red shift. You can actually, hopefully you can see the red letters here. So I hold this down. Then it's I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. Then it's the blue shift, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z.
So it's about actually memorizing the positions.
Yeah. So the you can learn the alphabet in about 5 minutes because it's sequential. In about 20 minutes, you'll be touch typing. And about 6 hours, you're doing about 20 words per minute. In about 25 hours of practice, you're up in the 50 words per minute range. I can sustain 70 words per minute. I can burst 130. And what I find is that once you get to around 60 words per minute, that's about as fast as you need, because when you're composing something, that's about as fast as you think.
But now, hold on. If you're wearing gloves, could you train yourself to do it even faster?
If you're wearing gloves? Well, gloves kind of get in the way, so you have to be pretty thin gloves.
No, the gloves that we're going to be talking about in a few minutes. You know which ones I'm talking about. The ones that train people to play the piano. I mean, could you train someone to use those gloves to use the twiddler?
Well, so that we haven't tried that yet. We've used the gloves to train people how to type Braille. We've used the gloves to teach people how to do Morse code. And we've also used the gloves to teach people how to do number pads, getting ready for standard desktop QWERTY and for stenotype. Yeah. But we haven't tried it with a twiddler yet, though it would be perfect for that.
I was going to say, I mean, that's more. What more could you want than a five-fingered device?
Yeah, it should be. If we use the gloves to teach the twiddler, we'd probably train up pretty quickly, is my guess.
Okay, but now I'm going to be asking all the tough questions, because you see a lot of things on the internet, and they talk about a pair of gloves that you can wear, and all of a sudden, after, I don't know, an hour or two, you can play a piece of music. Really?
Yeah.
Come on, you got to give us a bit of background on this. It just sounds so far-fetched, and it really does sound like the Matrix.
Yeah, it does. Well, when somebody first talked about the Matrix thing, I'm a scientist, and so anytime somebody compares to science fiction, I get a little nervous. But when somebody said it's just like downloading, skills from the Matrix, I sat there and thought about it for a while and said, yeah, this is about as close as you get. And when we first did it, I didn't believe it either. I had a student who wanted to do one of those exoskeleton things, right? He wanted to do a sort of an exoskeleton robot. And it's like, do you have $1 million? No. Are you a mechanical engineer? No. There's no way you're going to build one of these things. not in a semester.
So where did the actual gloves just come from? I mean, who thought of the idea of, why don't we get a pair of gloves to teach you how to do stuff?
Well, I had, this student wanted to go to do something in a semester, and I said, well, Kevin, why don't you, here's a crazy idea. I outlined the idea of the gloves. And he said, okay, I'll go try that. And he goes and tries it, comes back, he runs four participants. And the ones, he does control condition, 2 different songs. And the people with the gloves, after 20 minutes of exposure, they get, they play the song perfectly, right? And I said, well, how did you distract them? Well, I had them do this test. Really? You really got these results? And I said, let's go back. I don't believe you. This seems like too
now
good
you know
to be
how
true.
I'm reacting when you're telling me this.
Yeah,
so now I know how you're reacting.
Yeah, so we went back and I said, we're going to do this very carefully. We're going to get 16 participants. We're going to make this very controlled, right? Giving them graduate entrance exams and comparing conditions. And when we got the results back, they were even better than his initial one. And so we're like, oh, there's something real going on here. And so I started saying, okay, how does this work? So it turns out, if you think about, people will say, yeah, learn a language in your sleep, right? That doesn't really work. But if you go back to like simple psychology 101 and something like Pavlov's dogs, right? You pair the bell with the food, and the dogs can't help it. They learn to associate the bell with the food, and they start salivating, right? They can't help it. It's just there, right? It's just the exposure. And so if you think about it, all we're doing is exposing people to this tapping on their fingers. And so what happens is the haptics, the tactile sense is pretty lower down in your brain. And so you just kind of learn the motor memory for these things without attention. And if you think about motor memory, somebody who plays the piano well and has a piece memorized, they can play without thinking about it very much, right? They can have a conversation with you while playing. How is that possible? We know that humans are not particularly good at multitasking, yet they can do this complicated piece. Well, it turns out they're kind of relegating it to a different part of their brain. And what we're doing when we're teaching people, when we're tapping their fingers, we're actually talking to that lower level part of their brain. That's the best explanation I have. And so it works. And what I do oftentimes, I have a lot of people who are skeptical about this, a lot of scientists, and I think they should be. This is why we publish everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we publish everything. You can reach what we're doing. And I had a professor from University of Portland, I think, come by once, and he said, Zad, I love your work, but I really don't believe these gloves. I'm like, okay, we'll just put them on and we'll go do this. And so I put on the gloves, and I think we have Beethoven's Ode to Joy, which is a really simple song, right? It's the one you see in our presses. We're not talking about Mozart's Turkish March, which is what we use these days, right? Which is a very complicated piece. We use a very simple piece because you learn that one quickest. And I hadn't realized that my student had left the entire song on the glove. Right. Usually we just do one stanza at a time, or one phrase, one musical phrase at a time. Kind of the ding 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 ding. Wow, that's awful.
But I know what you're talking about. Okay, but it's only just one stanza, and he left the whole song in the glove.
Yeah, Caitlin left the whole song in the glove. So it was this whole song is like 4 of these different musical phrases, right? And I take the professor, and we start talking about other things. And I say, and he says at the end of the sort of the get together, hey, can I try it now? I'm like, try what? The glove. Oh yeah, I forgot. Here, let me give me the glove. I pulled off the glove off his hand, and I put him down on the piano. I say, here's your starting note, right? Because they don't know where to start. And he focuses really hard and can't do it. I'm like, okay, you're trying too hard. This is a very Zen-like thing. You perform best in the manner in which you were trained. You were trained without any attention. And because you're trying to force it, you can't do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about wearable computers for dogs, something to get your attention away from your hands. And when I say go, you're going to start playing, right? And you're going to focus on me. You're not going to focus on your hands. So we started talking, and I got him really interested in the wearable computers for dogs. And I say go. And then I immediately start saying something to keep his, a sound bite to keep him attentive on me. And he starts playing. And he's playing perfectly, right? And I keep on saying interesting things, keeping him focused on me, and his hand is just possessed. It starts playing this whole song. And as we're talking, I'm realizing as he's playing more and more that it's more than I expected there to be. Right? He's playing the whole song, and I finally say to him, "Hold it! Now you're just messing with me. You know how to play, right?" And he says, "No." Then how do you know this? It's not on the glove. He said, "I don't know." Okay, and he gets done with the song. I say, "Do that again." And so he starts playing again now, and I said, "Now don't pay attention too much to it. You know, you'll mess it up." And he plays through the whole thing again. I said, "How are you doing? You're just messing with me. I couldn't believe it, right?" And so I find, give me the glove back. Give me the glove back. I put the glove on and I feel it, right? And I'm like, oh, the entire song is there. And so it was the first time we actually tried the entire song passively.
How long did it take him to learn?
About 1.5 hours. So
now,
1.5
what is
hours.
the glove actually doing? What does the glove actually do to the hand that you can actually know what notes to play?
It's really, really simple, and still surprising this works. So we just have little vibrator motors at the base of each finger, right? So at the base of your thumb and each finger, there's little vibrator motors. It's the same sort of vibrator motors in your smartphone.
Okay.
Right? And so normally, the first time we did it, we play the song, you know, like Beethoven's Ode to Joy. And as each note is played, we vibrate the finger that corresponds to that note. And so you just know the finger order, right? And so if you're doing something like Amazing Grace or Turkish March or something like that, you have to worry about crossing, right? You have to move your hand up and down. While very few people have perfect pitch, almost everybody has relative pitch. So they know that, you know, if I'm playing and this finger was next, but this finger is coming up, and this finger is higher pitched than this one, you know you have to cross. And so it turns out that people just really quickly adapt their hand motion to the song because they know, I mean, once they start playing it, they recognize the song and they kind of know what to do. And so the whole thing about moving the hand up and down the scale, it just works, to my surprise. But the other big surprise is that, you know, the tapping and the song, turns out you can get rid of the song. You can actually just tap the fingers in the right sequence over and over and over again, and people will learn the motor memory without having the associated song. The CNN piece you see, when you look at the CNN thing where we did this live to the weatherman, we just put the glove on the weatherman's hand as he was working on a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Put it on his hand, let him go. And there was no music there, right? There's no sound for him to listen to. It's just tapping his fingers. And when he comes out on camera, he's not heard. You know, he comes out to play on the piano. He doesn't know heard the piece before. He has no idea what he's going to play. And so he puts down his hand, and we put down the right spot, and he starts playing. And then you can see him going, "Oh, this is what this song is." And then he starts getting the rhythm right? So as soon as he recognizes the song, you see him improve. And as he goes through it, if you look at the whole piece, as he goes through it, he gets better and better really fast on the rhythm because now he actually knows what song he's playing. But up to that point, he had no idea what he was going to play, which is really insane. Cool. It is insane. And so we have the same thing with Morse code. Morse code's interesting. We've done that now with smartwatches. We have a little program you can download on a smartwatch, and it'll tap your wrist over time, but there you actually have to hear the letters in your ear, right? Or you don't learn it. At least we haven't tried it without the audio. I can't imagine what would happen without the audio. But
so I'm curious. So you can teach someone to play the piano, and I get that because there's certain keys, and you can tell them, you can obviously program the fingers on which keys to push. That makes sense to me. If you want to teach someone to read Braille, that involves sensitivity of the fingers.
Yeah.
So maybe I misunderstood, but how do you teach someone to read Braille? Because if you can't read those dots, you're not really reading the Braille.
Actually, what you do is you teach them to type Braille first.
Okay.
So Braille is made with 6 dots, you know, normal uncontracted Braille. And so here's 6 dots. They're controlled by these 6 fingers, right? This is the left side, this is the right side. And so, when we're doing the quick brown fox jump over the lazy dog, right? When I do the G in dog, you hear dog and you hear D-O-O-G. When you hear E, it actually vibrates these 4 fingers, right? And so now I've learned that these 4 fingers mean G, right? So then when I go and I start feeling a Braille cell, and I feel these 4 pips, these 4 cells, right? These 4 dots in the cell, I go, okay, there's 4 dots there. How do I type that? I type it like that. What letter is that? That's G, right? And so it was nice. Yeah, that was kind of a surprise to us too. It's the fact that we could teach people how to type Braille and then they learn how to read Braille was really cool. So we could do it visually, right? We're doing this on Georgia Tech students. So we showed it to them visually and they got it. We told them to type G and they could do it. And then we actually just had them feel the Braille cells. And Braille is designed to be read, right, by anybody, right? So it's designed to be very distinctive. And to our surprise, yeah, they were really good at recognizing the cells. Now they were slow because each time they were thinking about, okay, how do I type that? What letter is that? But the thing is, they could do it, and so that was quite exciting.
That is just mind blowing. I mean, this stuff obviously fascinates me because with technology augmenting our lifestyles, whether it be from a visual point of view, from an exoskeleton point of view. Yesterday, we had the privilege of interviewing Richard Browning, who has now augmented his flight by adding jet engines on his arms, and he can just take off and fly around, which is just absolutely amazing.
Cool.
I mean, have you ever seen any of his stuff before?
No, I haven't seen anything recent.
They call him the British Iron Man, and he literally has built a suit, and he can take off, and I think that they broke a Guinness Book of World Records 2 weeks ago, 74 kilometers an hour flying over water. It's just insane where they thought they could go. And now he's realized instead of using gasoline, if we had an electric engine and we could run it on battery, we could go further and faster depending on the efficiency of these engines. So these are all things that are just developing over time.
The problem there is energy efficiency. So the problem is, gasoline jet engine fuel is got a high energy density. The lithium batteries these days are only like a quarter or a half that in best case. So energy density is a problem, but there is a way to get around it, which is to beam the power to you. So just like you have solar energy, right? You can actually create a maser, a microwave laser, and actually transfer the power remotely to the pack. And I believe Georgia Tech a long time ago showed that they could actually power a helicopter this way.
No, get out of here. No. So I'm going to have to tell him. I'm going to send Richard an email now. You two need to get in touch.
but the thing is, do you really want this really high power microwave aimed at you as you're flying?
Probably not. And what happens if they miss while you are flying and then you lose connection and then?
Yeah, there's all sorts of bad things. You have really good tracking systems so you don't lose power or get yourself cut in half.
Well, small price to pay. But now I know we've got a couple of classes. We've got a couple of classes, and you obviously need to leave a little bit earlier. So, Mr. McNulty, do you have any students in your class that would like to ask any questions? Anyone in your class, Mr. McNulty? Yes, Kiki, you got someone in your class you want to ask? So we've got Kiki in Greece. You must just unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, ask the questions, guys. The question. Can I buy your magic gloves?
They want to know, can they buy your magic gloves?
Yeah, unfortunately not. You can make them. They're not that hard to make, actually. But yeah, they're not for sale yet. We've not made a product out of them.
Have you considered it from a commercial point of view?
Well, yeah. One of the things we've been doing recently is it turned out we had a friend, Debbie, up at a rehab center here, it's called the Shepherd Center. And she had people who had spinal cord breaks, partial spinal cord breaks. And she convinced us to try use these gloves on these patients to try to improve their sensation dexterity. So these are people who have tetraplegia. That means all 4 limbs are affected, and they'd have curled up hands and not be able to use their fingers very well. And so her theory is that when we put the gloves on, that we'd actually stimulating the fingers would actually cause the brain to recruit more and more neurons to actually try to explain the sensation that was happening. And as it turned out, she was right. In 8 weeks, we had people going from typing with 1 finger to typing with 4 fingers, or not being able to dress themselves, being able to button their own buttons. And recently, yeah, it is massive. And recently, we tried to do it with a stroke. Stroke patients, if they have limb involvement, and I mean, I think most people have it in their family somewhere. They have, it's when you have that the drooping face, or if you have it on your left side, if you're stroking left hand side of your brain, you might affect your body, and you end up with your muscles just in spasm all the time, and you just end up doing like this all the time. And so what we did is we put the glove on them, and now we have people who went from going like this to being able to do this. And so we had people who haven't been able to use this limb in 12 years can now ride a bike.
And what sort of turnaround time was that?
About 8 weeks. Again, it's about 8 weeks to get the effect.
So do you realize the implications of what these gloves can do? I mean, you never ever expected that.
No, and that was quite a surprise. And it turns out about 500,000 people a year, so about 1 million people a year in the U.S. alone suffer from stroke with upper limb involvement, and half of those really can't be helped because they have this type of muscle spasm. It's called tone, and the current treatment is injecting Botox. And so, and that's not really good treatment. So what we're looking at now is actually using these gloves to affect tone and give these people his limbs back. And now I kind of feel guilty about not making this stuff commercial. So we're going to probably start a company.
I sincerely believe that there's huge scope from a commercial point of view, because even if it's not, because you want people to.
Yep, we've lost him. You all still have me, but do we have him? Do we have Steve?
We can hear you, and Steve is frozen right now. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. So let's keep on going. You guys got questions for me?
Here has a question for you. Come on over. Introduce yourself. This is Holland Middle School, and
my name is Ian. I'm from Holland Middle School. And how do you get into that career?
How do I get into this career?
Yeah. How'd you get started?
Start now. Like middle school is exactly the right time, right? So what you start doing is start reading books, start playing with electronics. These days it's so much easier to get into this stuff. Get those little Arduino kits, right? And start learning how to put stuff together. It's just learning how to start an event and tear stuff apart. I grew up in what was called a Goodwill store, and stuff would come in like electronics. And I just learned how to fix them. Just tear stuff apart, fix it, put it out for sale. My grandmother ran the store. So at this stage, right, there's so much. There's the first robotics stuff. There's all these robotics kits. There's the Mindstorms Legos. Just start getting cool projects from the internet.
I think we are back. Yes, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. I think we lost connectivity for a second.
It's okay. We're having a party.
I can imagine. I know that Mr. McNulty was obviously jumping on the bandwagon. He's a seasoned expert. So what were you guys asking questions there?
We were learning about
how do you get started in this, right? Cool. So the other thing is at your age, I started focusing on my mathematics, and really started doing algebra 1, algebra 2. Took advanced mathematics, and just started building stuff, playing around, and that's the way I got into this.
Did you ever work with Jay at the MIT lab? Makey and those guys? Jay Silva?
No,
that
was a little bit after my time.
I mean, obviously MIT's got an incredible reputation for giving you all the tools in the world and all the resources to do the most amazing things.
Yeah, so that's the thing. There's around the different universities, the Georgia Tech, CMU, MIT, University of Washington. There's a lot of these places where, as undergrads, you're encouraged to get in and make things, and there's these labs that you can go in and use 3D printers and laser cutters and all this type of stuff, and they encourage you to go have fun. So they also encourage you again to do research. There is what's great is that as an undergrad, you can do state-of-the-art research with a professor for credit or for pay. And whenever you're looking at selecting a university, look for one where you can actually do research with a professor as a freshman.
I mean, that's what an opportunity. That would be absolutely amazing. Sebastian, I mean, we got Sebastian in India, Smith in India. We've got Joe. Any more questions from your side? Because we've got about 7 or so minutes left. Because Prof has to go and lecture, so we need to let him out a little bit early.
I understand.
I'm listening.
Morning. We're a little slow. How about you, Sebastian?
Have you got a question, Sebastian?
I'm listening and learning so that I can go through and teach my students here and then get their questions back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. So, Joe, anyone from your group? Otherwise, I've got lots of questions. Don't worry, I'm not shy.
One of the things.
Go ahead.
One of the things that just happened. I don't know if you guys can see this, but if you go here, BBC just released. They have this show called Our Blue Planet.
Yes.
And they just released a little video about our work with the dolphins. So
no, you're not working with dolphins too.
Yeah. So we do a lot of work with two-way communication with dolphins, wild dolphins, and they just released a video about that work. And so if you guys are curious, you can click the link I just put into the Hangout and see that little video on the subject.
I'm going to have to check that out. So where to next?
Oh, well,
I mean, you're helping stroke victims. You're helping people who are paraplegic. You're helping people to read Braille, obviously play the piano. Will we see, for example, American Idol's competition or America's Got Talent, where a contestant has been rehearsing with gloves on for 3 or 4 hours and then gets on stage and plays a piece of music? I mean, what are we looking at?
Well, I'm afraid the musicianship there is probably not going to be the best. We teach you the motor memory. We don't teach you the musicianship. So that's what you really want to do once you learn. A lot of reason why people give up musical instruments is the simple amount of time it takes to learn the memory of the piece. If we can get rid of that time, then you can concentrate on how it sounds and the pacing and the emotion to it. And it certainly helps musicians with repetitive stress injury, compute. But let me tell you about something else we're doing right now. We're working on exactly right now. Is we're trying to speed up brain-computer interfaces. So one of the things I work on is sign language recognition. And one of the things we're trying to do is get sign language off the motor cortex for people who are locked in. So let me explain that a little bit. So Lou Gehrig's disease is a disease that you have progressive degeneration of the muscle. Of control of the muscle. Until you're completely locked in, you can't control your eyes, you can't control anything, right? You're on a respirator. But your brain is still there. And so one of the most famous people with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, was Stephen Hawking. But he still had an eyebrow. He still could actually communicate by using a keyboard that he controlled with his eyebrow. Some of the people my colleague works with, Melody Jackson, have no motor control. But this is a progressive disease. The idea was, can we actually teach them a language which actually we can see on the brain before they get locked in, then use that language to actually communicate. And so the idea was, if we could actually scan the brain at a fine enough resolution fast enough, we could probably pick up phonemes, right? The motor cortex is up here, and there's a region here that actually controls the lips and the larynx and the tongue. And if you could scan that fast enough, as somebody who attempts to speak, we might be able to figure out what you're saying. But the problem is our scanners are 1,000 times too imprecise to do that. However, sign language involves the fingers, the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, right? And those are large swaths in the motor cortex. It's a very, very big region. And so we started saying, can I actually use sign language to communicate? So, you know, somebody who's locked in, their attempt to move looks like us actually moving. And so we decide, can we actually have them say if they're hot or cold? Are they in pain or are they okay? So we're looking at one-hand versus two-hand signs, and you know, the opposite side of the brain controls the hand involved. And so when we looked at pain, you know, both sides lit up. When we looked at okay, only one side lit up. And so we were able to distinguish between two signs with 93% accuracy. Then when we started doing phrases like the bed is hot, I'm in pain, you actually see the activation across the motor cortex and actually recover phrases directly from the scan.
So you would have a device that actually measures that.
Well,
like a
this is fMRI. This is a 2-ton magnet. This is a whole facility dedicated to imaging your brain. Right. And so now what I'm doing is I'm trying to see if we can do the same thing with something that's more portable, something called functional near infrared. And this is something I started back in 2010 before I went to work on Google Glass. But now I have some time to try to do it again. And so we're going to see how far we can push this. Well, and as far as I know, I'm the only person in the world who can say with a straight face that we're trying to get natural language directly from brain signals.
That is incredible, because I did an interview with a professor at one of the universities in the US who connected a chip into his patient's brain, who is also paralyzed from the neck downwards. And he's got the robotic arm, Rob Gaunt, and his patient's got a robotic arm. And when they blindfolded the patient and they moved some of the fingers on the robotic arm, he was able to tell them which finger they were moving because of the signal that it sent to the brain. I mean, we are so close to integrating all these things. Are you not worried about where the future is going?
Well, when you actually are in the field, you realize how far we have to go yet.
Okay. The realism.
These fears about artificial intelligence or these sorts of stuff, it's, you know, when you're actually in the field, you realize that it's going to take a long time to get to the point where we actually can do decent results with this sort of stuff. So, you know, for me, it's not moving quick enough.
Okay, but I know you've got to run because you've got to go and lecture. So I just want to say thank you so much for making of your time. And I know all the students that we had quite a few people watching it live as well from different countries. Some of the students, their classes don't permit them to be on the internet, but they're allowed to watch the live stream and then email questions through. And Mr. McNulty and Sebastian in India. And of course, we also had Smita and Preeta, who's also watching the live stream as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be watching you very closely to see all the latest developments, because I am absolutely fascinated at the fact that people are integrating or enhancing what humans can do, but you have found a way to fix things that don't work so well anymore. And we've always thought that because the brain is such a complicated thing, we can't fix those things. And now you're using simple devices just to make it happen, which is just incredible.
That's fun. It's stuff that you can make yourself. There's nothing hard here.
Well, that's the other thing, that it's accessible and affordable. So, Thad, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. And I'll send you all the photographs. We need you to pose for one smile so we can get one quick photo. Excellent. Because what happens is sometimes YouTube, when they choose their own photo to put for the actual YouTube video, it's always the one where you're in mid-action.
All right, I got to run. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. You're a legend. Thanks a lot. Okay, bye-bye.